everyone. Welcome back to the MTG Goldfish Podcast, episode 104, your weekly podcast covering everything Magic the Gathering related. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, mtggoldfish.com, as well as YouTube now. So hello, everyone on YouTube. Joining me, as always, is the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. Richard, how are you?
Hey, Chaz, what's going on?
What's going on? Seth, or probably better known as Saffron Olive, is also joining us, our resident jank brewer and all-around content creator for Magic the Gathering. What's up, Seth?
What's up, guys?
What's up? We have a lot to talk about. And always, Chaz, just an all-around content creator for Magic the Gathering as well, and I do write about the financial aspect of the game as well. So Seth will not be here on the normal time, so we took the time to sit down, carve out some time for you all, and talk about a lot of news that sprouted up the last couple of days. So actually really big changes. So glad you both could sit down and talk about this. And we will just publish this early and you can all hear our reactions. So just going down the list, we are going to talk about an article on the Mothership site by Sam Stoddard. And it talks about, actually, it basically emphasizes everything we've mentioned the last cast about transparency and some reasoning behind the standard bannings and what we can expect going forward. We have a statement from Chris Cox, our new Wizards of the Coast CEO, talking about a lot of different changes coming to the digital aspect of Magic the Gathering, as well as a couple other different things that we will address. It is called Making Moves. A Magic like the center of many Magic memes over the course of Magic the Gathering Online. Worth, as you know him, is leaving Wizards, so it's actually like kind of bittersweet. I don't know if you both can kind of use those if you could blame Worth for your terrible draws anymore. And then we will wrap things up with just some general MTGO changes that are actually pretty substantial. So let's just dive right in. The article from Sam Stoddard, again, emphasizing some standard changes. What was your both reactions to this? So we'll start with you, Richard.
Yeah, well, to summarize, he first starts off by talking about his tweet he sent out, and he basically told us he lied to us about saying standard was rosy. It actually had a lot of problems. And then he talked about how the majority of their data was Magic Online data, and they found that blue-white flash was overly dominant. And they found out that people didn't like Emrakul, so they banned Emrakul. But then they were like, well, how can we ban the second best deck when the first best deck is not being changed? So they took Reflector Mage as kind of a casualty hit there. And Smuggler's Copter is ubiquitous. They took that out. And he goes on to talk about Collected Company, how in hindsight it should have been banned. It was kind of format warping. And the general tone of the article is they're taking standard bans in a different light now. They're not going to be as conservative as they were, with Jace being the last kind of ban. And also, they also mentioned that they feel that threats have kind of outpaced answers, and that they're going to kind of tone that balance back. So that was the overall message of the article, and to me, it seemed pretty encouraging. They have finally recognized that having 8 abilities on a creature being under the curve is like too much, that we need efficient removal, we need efficient counter spells, efficient rats and stuff like that. So it seems good that they're kind of bringing that together. It's very weird to me that he kind of just outright admitted he lied to us with the rosy state of standard. That was a little weird. I thought they would have tried to just shove that under the rug, but I guess this is good for transparency. Not good that they initially tried to pull a fast one on us, but at least they've kind of recognized their mistakes. It seems promising. The state of standard seems to be good if you ignore the fact that a ton of people lost money. If you just kind of say, well, that's the cost of playing standard, the balance of the format and where they're going with it and how they're willing to listen to feedback and look at the data, I think is very promising.
Well said. What about you, Seth?
Yeah, I also came away from this article generally feeling encouraged. So we've talked about the bannings already and the upsides and the downsides, and my opinion on the bannings that we just had hasn't really changed. I still think it's going to make Standard more fun. I still am a little nervous about having bannings in Standard, and it sounds like maybe I just need to get over that because it sounds like bannings will be more frequent in the future. That was one of the things that I definitely took away from it. Even though they have said multiple times, like, don't expect this to mean more bannings, it's really hard to read this article and not come away with the impression that compared to the past, where we average one standard banning every 5 or 6 years, that it might happen a little more frequently now and a little more liberally moving forward. And the other stuff is stuff I've been harping on and written articles about for a long time, about the lack of efficient answers of any sort of hate cards. And it's nice to hear Wizards actually coming out and saying, we see this too and we agree with you and we will be addressing it. Like, we work so far in the future that you're not going to see this in Amonkhet necessarily, but it is going to happen when we do realize that we've pushed things too far in the creature direction, and we need to push back a little bit in the other direction. So overall, I came out of it feeling good. Like Richard, I have no idea why they put the "I lied to you" paragraph in there. Like, I think you could have just left that paragraph out. Like, from their perspective, I guess I'm glad that they did address that, but it's just so odd that they would bring that up and remind everyone and pretty much just directly say, yeah, like, I lied to you. So I don't know what that was about.
I think they needed to keep, and so this is kind of just my take. I do appreciate the transparency, and it's something that the three of us have talked about on this cast for quite some time, and I'm assuming a lot of other Magic players. So I really do appreciate that, at least in 2017, in this day and age, that we are getting some transparency that we really never had in the past. Like, I love looking, kind of looking at things through their eyes and seeing why exactly they did what they did. So I do appreciate that, and I think it was well done. I do think they should have left in everything. I mean, everything should have been talked about and honestly, it was just a huge debacle. I mean, really, you have to put in the fact that you misinterpreted at least the data for everybody. And at least, you didn't quite like, hey, we completely botched this, but at least you admitted to the fact that you really didn't portray this in its light in its entirety. You kind of didn't really give the entire truth. So I do appreciate that. It's not hard to do, or it's not easy to do that. We've talked, like Seth said, and like you said, Richard, we talked about the bannings at length. And for everyone that kind of listened to that podcast, that was a really organic. That's basically as organic as you get. We had the announcement, we hit record, we talked about it. We kind of went a lot of different ways, and some may say we were a little negative, but it is kind of hard to now set this precedent going forward. I do think it's hard to take everything at face value because, once you're in it, you kind of don't really like it. But I do think going forward, it could be really beneficial. But it does kind of still get under my skin that you look back in hindsight and say, basically, you sat by idle to let some of these cards, go by. And they were clearly suppressing standard for quite a bit of time. I mean, you look at Collected Company, if you read that article, it basically says they should have banned Collected Company because they had the similar numbers that they did with these three cards. So I get it. You can't go back. You can only go forward. But I think this is at least good to know going forward, and that they're already looking at some stuff and fully well expect. They brought up the copycat deck. If anyone doesn't know what that is by now, it's the Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian combo. They are looking at that already. So if it does end up doing really well at the Pro Tour, you can expect something to happen. But they feel right now that there's some cards to deal with it. So again, all around, good job by Sam.
So Chaz, you sound like you agree with the Collected Company ban that Sam was talking about. Seth, do you feel the same way? Do you think Collected Company should have been banned?
I'm in such a weird place, and I don't really have my feelings 100% straight on this issue. I think the cost to banning cards in Standard is really severe. I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast, but after the bannings were announced, I was getting tweets and emails from saying stuff like, I'm a 15-year-old kid, I bought Emeralds with my Christmas money, and now I can't play Magic anymore. Stuff like that. So there's a really real cost to banning cards, especially in Standard. So it's really hard for me to say. Do I think that the format would have been better if Collected Company was banned? Yeah, I definitely see that. Is it worth the cost? I just don't know. And if this is what we need to do with more bannings, shouldn't we just still be on the faster rotation schedule? Like, it seems like things are working in a weird direction. Like, why would you go back to a longer rotation? Because people don't like their cards losing value and want to be able to play the same deck longer, but then just randomly ban cards whenever you feel like it. Isn't that the worse than just keeping the fast rotation and dealing with the feel bads of having to sell your deck a little bit early instead of having to pay that price with getting your deck banned outright at some random announcement that happens 8 times a year?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same boat there where my stance from the last podcast hasn't changed. I feel the financial hit to players, and I don't mean speculators and other, people, but I mean like Timmy who just, got $100 for Christmas, bought a playset of Emeralds, and then boom, the Emeralds are banned. I feel that is very bad for the game, but in the same light, the bannings themselves make the game healthier, like in terms of actual gameplay. So there's a trade-off there. I don't think Galactic Company should have been banned, and I'm worried that Wizards is kind of pandering the masses too much. Like, just every week there's a new Reddit thread complaining about stale standard, complaining about Siege Rhino, Coco, Emrakul, whatever. It's the internet. People will always, always, always complain. And I hope Wizards isn't running around trying to squash these complaints just because they're complaints. It kind of reminds me of that Simpsons episode where Homer's brother gets him to build a car, and he basically just throws in every feature he wants, and the car is terrible. So I hope Wizards, actually does have some oversight here and doesn't just run around trying to squash player complaints, because we're guilty of this. People love to complain, right? And the louder the voice, the worse it gets. So hopefully we don't go too extreme. Hopefully, if Copycat is a deck, there is some time for it to play out, that there's just not, a ban hammer swung in its face immediately. I hope Wizards continues to print new cards as a check for existing cards rather than relying on the ban hammer. So, hearing that Coco could have been banned gets me a little worried. That kind of sets the precedent. Was Coco too oppressive? If we have another Coco level card, it's surely getting the ban now, right? If a new one comes out in Aether Revolt or Almaket, still makes me a little nervous. This announcement made me less nervous, but I'm still on the nervous side of things. We're gonna have to see how this plays out.
I mean, my thing is, again, this is kind of the longest running successful card game, right? Like, it's still around. And I think it just comes, it's the nature of the beast, right? That is how things have to be addressed when you have a game like this. It's not a fully digital game. Like, you look at other games, Hearthstone can errata and change a card, push out a patch, and it's over. Magic can't do that. So when you legitimately have some oppressive cards, and now they're kind of admitting that they looked at some of these cards as oppressive as the 3 that they just banned. I think I did say this on the last cast. They are really, really stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I think you brought up some good points, Richard, that you can't make it perfect for everybody. And there are a percentage of people that it's like, listen, I just bought all these cards to play Standard. I wanted to play Standard. Now I can't play Standard. And that really sucks.
Well, the thing is, this would have been fixed if they had put a Relic of Progenitus in the format. It's so friggin' simple. Like, the game has survived for 20 years without having constant bannings because Wizards made the game a certain way. And if they're going to change their design decisions, not print removal, not print any answers to anything, of course this is going to happen. What did they expect to happen? So the solution is to print cards like that. If you had a Relic of Progenitus, you wouldn't have to ban Emrakul. And that's how the game was for 20 years. And that's how they need to get back to, and I think they're admitting that in the article, but we're going to suffer through this for another year or two until things catch back up, I think.
Is the problem how hard they're pushing some of these cards? Like, when we saw Smuggler's Copter, everyone's like, yeah, okay, that's a lot of stuff. And, we had to kind of just have faith in Wizards that it was balanced. Turns out they were wrong. We saw Emrakul, we're like, that's a lot of powerful stuff on this body. And what worries me is when we look at the Aether Revolt cards, we're like, holy moly, power creep. Like, all of these cards seem ridiculous. They seem, quote unquote pushed. Is it the same problem now where, because they want cards to be exciting, they try to push them, and now they're too good, and the only way to get rid of them is to ban them because, you can't print hate cards that are that good as well, because then nothing would ever get played. Is the problem that they're trying to create exciting cards, and that just inherently means power creep, and inherently you run the risk of bannings.
Right, but again, and that point can go either way too, and it is a good point, Richard. It's like every player puts their faith in Wizards to get it right, and most of the time they do get it right, but you have to also accept that they get it wrong sometimes. And yes, they may be pushing cards, but I think that's inherent in a lot of card games, and I think they have to make a decision at one point. How consistent do we need to be in pushing cards and keeping cards relatively, I guess, low key? Because it happens in other card games too. I mean, not to digress fully on Hearthstone, but if you have played that game, first it was like Ragnaros, and like, oh, that was a pretty good card. Then it was like Dr. Boom, and it's like, you can't play a deck without Dr. Boom. And like, it keeps just growing and growing and growing, and the cards get better and better and better. So at one point, you have to kind of bring back the reins entirely. And I think they've done that successfully over the years, but sometimes they still get it wrong. And I was a little down on the bannings, but I do see it as a long-term positive. I just hope that it doesn't happen as often. And they said it probably won't happen as often as they think it's going to happen. So at least that's optimism.
All right, but this gives us a new topic to talk about. Aether Revolt. What is the card most likely to be banned if there's a banning?
I think Felidar Guardian.
You think copycat combo?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go expertise cycle. I think getting
in standard, like get rid of them all in standard.
Either all of them or the one that gets played the most. I think this fast. I can't picture how this fast mana is good, especially since all of these creatures are basically 2-for-1s to begin with. So like just playing a spell and then getting an insanely crazy creature off of it, I think is going to be too much. But I'm not saying it's going to be banned, but of the cards to be banned, I think this would be, on the radar. If there was a quote unquote watch list, I would put
I'm with you here. I'm with you here, Richard. Those cards are always really dangerous.
I mean, Felidar Guardian's an obvious choice because they already mentioned they're aware of it, so I think that gives it a leg up. I think the expertise cycle, is more dangerous in Modern and could end up being something there potentially, but it could happen in Standard as well. But I'm going to go with Paradox Engine. I don't know the format. It might not be Standard, but to me that seems like the card that could most likely be degenerate in a format somewhere.
Are you ready for Commander Clash, where all of our decks have Paradox Engine all the time? Because I am. Gotta play that card while we can, man.
And one more thing before we move on, Chaz, you mentioned the collected company banning and being on board with that, but where does that stop? Like, from my perspective, what worries me is if you're okay with banning Paradox Engine, or
I would be okay with that too.
If you're okay with banning Collected Company, then does that mean we should have banned Grey Merchant or Pack Rat? And does that mean we should have banned Master of Waves or Siege Rhino? Like, should we have just banned the best card of every standard ever?
I'm not saying we should have. I'm saying that based on what they told us, they should have. And why? Because the counter argument, and I get where you're coming from, but I can also make the argument, it's like, well, then why did you start now? Like, why now then? You had all these cards in the past, and why start with Emrakul, Smuggler's Copter, and Reflector Mage? Why don't you just let it play out then? I mean, it could go both ways. All I'm saying is that it's a little annoying to read that, hey, listen, we had similar numbers based on other cards in the past, and we didn't touch those. So it's just like, I guess, again, it's like really hard for them to start something without saying we should have done it back then too. And it's like, where do you stop? Where do you start? Where do you stop? I don't.
Well, I got an answer for you, Chaz. The answer is money. The answer is low F&M attendance. It's gotten low, so they're like, oh, better hit the panic button.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, that I guess is a valid point.
All right, let's move on to Chris Cox.
Yeah, moving on. Yeah, the announcement, or I guess the statement from Chris Cox. So just break it down a little bit for us, Richard.
All right, so Chris Cox, CEO of Wizards of the Coast, released kind of a press statement, not even on like the Magic the Gathering site, but on the Wizards site, and basically outlining his vision. And there's 3 main points. We are reimagining digital versions of Magic and other Wizards games, And then they basically name dropped a bunch of studios of which they've gathered people from, which apparently will work on the next version of Magic. And they're thinking about how players might tap mana and prepare spells for the future. No concrete statements in there, just kind of a general thing. We will bring our characters and worlds to other games and experience. What would it be like to throw fireballs as a planeswalker in an MMO, or quest for treasure with your friends in a D&D augmented reality game? And then the last statement is, we will make your Wizards experience more efficient, connected, and convenient, from getting matched in a big tournament to tracking your achievements and getting your friends together. Stuff like that. Kind of the biggest news out of here is they allude once again to Magic Digital Next, which they don't give any kind of concrete statements about. And also, Magic IP in other areas. Trying to, I guess, piggyback off Pokemon Go with a D&D augmented reality game. And, maybe you can, play a WoW-esque MMO with Planeswalkers.
Oh, that's a lot to digest. I think we've mentioned this on the podcast ever since, maybe even before they officially had kind of announced this Magic Digital Next, that, oh man, I have for some time been thinking that they had to do something about MTGO, and I think we're getting closer to at least more information, or they're kind of just nudging us to say, hey, listen, Magic the Gathering Online is going to be completely different here soon. It seems like all around that they're trying to, guess, bring this company or at least Wizards into 2017, which I guess is why they hired him in the first place. So what are your thoughts, Seth?
It's all just so vague. Like, most of it sounds good. We're going to make Magic better and do tons of cool things and make Magic Online even sweeter, and everything's going to be wonderful. But it's just so short on specifics that it's hard for me to really take anything away from this other than Wizards is going to try different things that we haven't seen before online in other aspects of the game, and other than that, I don't know what to expect. Like, it all sounds good, but I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, this is not made for us. This is made for investors, and it's basically just a bunch of name dropping and buzzword dropping, right? Like, oh, here are all the legitimate studios we've hired from, so don't worry, we have a legitimate team, and let's throw in, augmented reality's hot. Let's talk about that. Oh, MMOs. Yeah. Let's talk about integrating all your games and experiences. It's just kind of marketing hype. But a lot of people are worried that there's no assurance of your Magic Online collection being safe. There's no kind of migration path and things like that. But I don't think that was meant, to target us. Like, if this was actually posted on the mothership or kind of the MTGO blog, I'd be very concerned. But to me, this is just Chris Cox talking to people that don't know anything about Magic and D&D and kind of just assuring them that they're doing stuff that's up to date and relevant. So I wouldn't put too much stock into this, but they've been talking about the next Magic Online platform for like forever, and I don't know, this hasn't brought us any closer to it. This is just
I do think that's a good take, Richard. And I mean, the sky's not falling yet. Obviously, you can still read this and take away a couple key things other than just like, hey, like you said, just a lot of this name dropping and talking about what's cool right now, I guess, and what's hip with people. But I do think the underlying tone is they still are telling us, listen, there's going to be some changes, big changes coming, at least for MTGO and how we look as how we look on a digital platform. Like, this is not going to be what we are going to be doing going forward. So I don't know if it's time to sell your MTGO collection. I don't know. I don't think we're at that point, and I would assume if they were to do something like that, they would obviously have to have a plan to kind of get people on the right track. So,
yeah, it's kind of like standard rotation. Like,
right.
Magic
That's
Online is going away, but if you sell all your cards now, like, how are you going to play? And the thing with standard rotation is when it's going to happen. This could be 2 years out. It could be 6 months out. It could be 5 years out. So I don't, like, if you panic, like, what are you going to do? I guess you could switch to Hearthstone, right? But, like, if you actually want to play Magic, you can't just panic sell, because then you got nothing to do afterwards.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good point.
Only thing that makes me not worry too much is Wizards has a long track record of not getting digital things done fast. So my immediate worry of something crazy happening is it just really isn't there. I don't know how Wizards, the company that takes 10 years to release each update or leagues or new version of Moto, could all of a sudden get it right in like a year this time. That just doesn't add up to me. So I'm not super worried about the immediate future. My long-term biggest fear overall, if they want to make Magic Online pretty and look like Hearthstone, I can deal with that. That's probably even a good idea in general. If they want to make Magic Online cheaper in some sort of free-to-play model like Hearthstone or similar, I'm even okay with that. I hope they get the compensation right for people that have been building collections for a long time or do something there, but I think that's a worthy goal. What I'm not okay with is Wizards realizing that they can't make Magic Online be like Hearthstone if it's still Magic, and dropping phases or instants or other foundational aspects of what makes Magic such a great game to make some souped up spicy Hearthstone-esque version of Magic and not have a digital way to play real Magic.
Yeah, that's been a growing conversation, and I can't even see that happening. I can't see Magic being in some sort of like fast-paced. I know they talk about like how you are tapping your mana and playing spells, but I can't see the game, I guess, being condensed in a way. Maybe I have thought about this to some length just to kind of give my thoughts on this conversation. Maybe they just cut Magic the Gathering to standard. I don't know. Like, that would be the only way to really condense a lot of what's going on, I guess, in this digital platform, because you don't have to code and like include all these like old abilities and such, and just like, I guess you could do something like that, but that, I don't even know what purpose that serves. Like, you could just, I don't know.
Yeah, it lets them release faster, but let's not pretend like standard cards are simple. There's like a lot of weird, secret salvage and Triskaidekaphobia. There's like a lot of weird random effects in standard as well. But I hope they keep the core gameplay, like you guys mentioned. They can do a lot of stuff about wasted space, about animation and art and stuff like that. Like, you can make it a lot more flashy. You can make it a lot more like an actual video game. But if you try to switch to Hearthstone, let's say they remove instants, then it's not Magic anymore. And then I don't know who would play this. I think it was Seth. Like, if you just make it like Hearthstone, people just play Hearthstone, right?
I would just play Hearthstone. Yeah. I love Magic, but if they just made Magic literally like Hearthstone, I would have... The reason I play Magic is it's a great game. It's my favorite game, probably one of the best games ever made. And from what I can see, Wizards' competitive advantage over Hearthstone and Hex and all these other competitors that have emerged in the last couple of years is they have the best game. That's the one thing. They may be horrible at making digital games. They may be run by a bunch of people that have no idea what they're doing and all these complaints you hear. But the one thing they have is the best game out of the bunch. And if they change that, they lose their one competitive advantage.
That's probably the best point. We'll see. I mean, again, it's really vague. But what is not vague, and to kind of keep us rolling along here, is that Worth subsequently is being let go, fired. I don't know all the details, but Worth did announce it on his Twitter that he is no longer going to be part of Wizards of the Coast. So, coincidence?
Yeah, aside from being like a living meme, Worth is the head of Moto, right? Like, he oversees all of Moto. So, if we question how serious they're getting about this, then here's their first serious move, right? They're letting go of Worth, and they're apparently shaking it up and doing something. So it seems like they're actually doing something this time around, and it kind of sucks that Worth has to go. He's a pretty cool guy, and we like to blame Worth and stuff like that, even though it's not his fault. He's a living meme at this point, but, at the end of the day, it was his job, and I do feel bad for him, right? But hopefully this means, exciting new changes coming. And maybe instead of taking 10 years to deliver something, we actually get something delivered in 2-3 years. But having said that, Worth is a nice guy, and I wish him the best, and Hopefully he still is involved in Magic somehow. I don't know how. Maybe he'll pop in our stream and bless us with some luck. But the interesting comment I saw was instead of blaming Worth now, we can blame it on the fact that he's not there, so we can keep him in our memes forever.
There we go. That's how we're going to play this. Yeah, I think obviously the first thing that has to be done when you are trying to reimagine your digital platform is to clean house. Unfortunately, I don't know, but I guess that's how it has to be done.
The only thing that scares me is, despite whatever shortcomings Worth has, and he's a Magic person, and from going back to Chris Cox's announcement, you don't necessarily get the impression that they're hiring Magic people. They're talking about programmer people and Leapfrog and Valve and Warner Brothers and BioWare and all these places, but if they replace Magic people with just video game people or tech people or whatever, that makes me a little scared about what we were talking about before, that those people might not understand the importance of Magic being what it is. Like, if you don't know Magic, then, well, why do you need these bothersome instants programmed in? We can be more like Hearthstone, and, so that's the part that concerns me a little bit.
But Activision. No, but you're right. And it kind of, you're right. It is a little alarming that they wouldn't at least keep Worth on as some sort of consultant. I mean, he has worked on this aspect of the game for quite some time. I think it was like he's mentioned 16 years. And it just seems like you're kind of selling this could lead to, I'm not saying it's a definite, that you're kind of selling your soul out to all these video game programmers. Like you said, Seth, you have all these different studios that you're just making a video game rather than keeping, I guess, the sanctity of what Magic is.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a bad thing. Like, I mean, if you're gonna have a coup, you need to purge the government after. You can't keep Worth around, like, undermining your authority, right?
Right.
But I don't know, like, you're right. Like, Worth was a competitive player. He top 4 the Pro Tour or something. He knows Magic. He lives and breathes Magic. But at the same time, that was part of his downfall, right? Like, I don't want to play this weird game that looks like it's from the 90s. I want, modern day graphics and interaction and, someone who actually understands what esports actually is as opposed to a buzzword. So I say there's pros and cons here, right? You're going to get someone more qualified, but they're not as closely tied to Magic.
The things that is scary to me is we've seen Eternal card game. We've seen several fairly popular card games come up, digital card games that have been designed by old-time pros. Darwin Castle, LSV, Connolly Woods, they work at Direwolf, all these places. So if it would be reassuring to me if Wizards wanted to go this direction, if I knew those were people that actually knew and loved and cared about Magic. I think you can have people that are programmers and designers and can do this job really well, but are still Magic people, because those people are out there because they're making other successful games in the same space as Magic Online.
But those people are on the design side. It's like they'd be taking like Maro's job. We're talking about technical people, right?
I don't think Worth is a technical person.
But he is though, right? He oversees Magic on, like, literally,
right.
He oversees digital stuff. So,
I don't know what
so it's not like we're
job.
cleaning house of like Morrow and Ian Duke and like all those guys.
Right.
Or Sam Stoddard.
This is just the digital. Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, we'll see. I mean, the only, I guess, concern I have is that you bring on all these people, and where have those games gone, right? Like, where has all those, I guess, Magic knockoffs?
I don't see Blizzard
how those have
Entertainment in this
been-
list of companies. Here is Ben Brode coming? What's going on?
Yeah. We'll see. I guess let's keep moving on. So, in addition to that, you're going to have some Magic the Gathering online changes to deal with right now. So, we can't look forward without dealing with what's gonna happen right now. So, what is going to happen with MTGO in the near future, Richard?
All right. 3 changes published today. So pre-release is gone. Good thing. People are always confused, like, why the pay structure suddenly changes. They're just going to go straight into release events, like the normal release events. So that's fine. Change number 2, single game match draft leagues. So now you play a league, you draft, and you play 1-game matches until you have 7 wins or 4 losses. So basically Hearthstone Arena. 12 tickets to enter, 7 wins gives you 120 play points. So that's break even plus whatever you opened. Change number 3, treasure chests no longer will contain booster packs. They will go back to awarding play points. And then change 4 is like they added some cards to the treasure chests, which are too numerous to list. But so those are the major changes, and kind of the controversial ones are the arena style leagues and the reversion to play points.
Yeah, getting rid of pre-release is awesome. One of the things that drove me crazy is when they did pre-release, they only had really limited events, and they were often horrible. Like, if you wanted to draft, you had to play Swiss drafts and all this stuff that just wasn't great. So I'd find myself, like, having to wait for pre-release to end to play what I wanted with the new set. So just dropping that and letting everyone play what they want with the new set right away, I think is a good change. So I'm definitely on board with that one. Oh man, I want to hear your opinions on single game match draft leagues. I have some thoughts, but I'm probably going to go on a rant. So why don't you guys go first on that one?
So do we have to get someone to do a voiceover for our dwarf that invites you to come in and join the hearth? Pull up a chair by the hearth. I mean, I don't know. This is Hearthstone. Like this. Do you just draft like aggressive decks now because you're like a one and done? I don't know. Do you know how hard it is to go 7-4 in Magic?
Yeah. So remember we were just talking about, I hope they don't get someone who doesn't know anything about Magic to come in and just steal stuff from Hearthstone. I have a lot of concerns with this. First of all, 7-4, the absolute best prize is like barely above break even. Like 3 open packs is what, like a ticket of EV? And 7-4 is 63% win rate. So Finkel can do this, and that's about it. And the problem with Hearthstone, or the problem with Magic, is variance. You get mana screwed. In Hearthstone, that's mitigated because, you just get mana, right? On top of that, variance of not opening your mythic, not drawing your mythic. And I can see someone sitting down and losing like 3 games just like in a row in the span of 5 minutes and being super salty. And that's kind of Magic, right? And kind of the match evens that out. But I don't know. I can't see, sitting down and they play their, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter, and then you sit there and die, and then, I don't know. This is not for me. This is totally not for me. Even though I love Hearthstone Arena, I cannot see myself playing this, but maybe more casual players will play this. The one thing I do like about this is if you have 20 minutes, we can actually sit down and play a game. Today it's impossible. Your round may take up to an hour. This one is, 1 game, and if you need to forfeit it, fine, you forfeit it. It's not a big deal. But outside from that, it's just the pay is so low and the variance is so high. I just can't imagine it being a good time.
Yeah, and that's really the long and short of it, is that this game has a lot of variance that is not smoothed out by something like this. Like Hearthstone is kind of built, like we keep referring to Hearthstone because it's like, how can you not? It's smoothed out, like you said, Richard. It does kind of like smooth that out a little bit when you're dealing with just one game, right? Because that's what the game is built around. When you try to mold Magic into something that it's not, it looks a lot different, and it won't be the same. Now, I do understand, like if you have a short amount of time and you want to get one of these quick games of Magic in, that's fine, and you kind of just live with the consequences that you may win, you may lose, and you get something out of it. I don't know what that is, but maybe they'll reevaluate the prize structure.
Yeah, it's also $12. Remember, a Hearthstone Arena is $1.50. Right? This was $12 to sit there and die to variance.
Yeah, that is that needs to be lowered, like, I think soon, if not immediately.
Oh man,
that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, so I should start by saying, if you like this, that's awesome, and I'm fine with this being an option on Magic Online. I'm super scared that this is something they're going to force everyone into. We kind of saw this just recently with the 8-4 drafts being kind of channeled into leagues, and Wizards like has a way of like starting this as like, oh, we're gonna do this for a certain segment of people that might like it, and then forcing it down everyone's throats after a little while. So I'm very scared of that. I would stop playing limited if this was the only way to play limited in Magic. The variance thing is just so problematic. Like, you're going to play this and you're going to lose games just because you drew poorly. Sideboarding is suddenly not part of the game at all. There's just so many things I personally don't like about it. So I'm okay with this if this is something you like. I'm glad it's an option, but it is definitely not for me. And the payout it's laughable. I'm the biggest defender of Magic Online and arguing that it's not as expensive as it looks because you get stuff of real value. But in this, you're paying $12 for what is essentially a Hearthstone league. And there's not really any way to come out ahead. If you literally go the maximum amount of wins, 7 wins, you get your entry fee back and the cards you drafted, which on average are not worth much. In Hearthstone, if you get 7 wins, you come out ahead and you can go all the way up to 12 wins where you get way more than what you put in, where you're getting 2 or even more arena runs for free if you do well enough. So the fact that even if you win, you end up losing is just so frustrating for me. Like, they're not even hiding it anymore. Before, you had to do the math and figure out oh, what happens if I do this record or get this record. With this one, it's just the top prize. It's exactly your entry fee back. So there's no hiding it in this at all. And when you combine that with the fact that this is going to be the most high variance Magic event or tournament possible, to me that's a recipe for disaster and doesn't sound like fun. It's frustrating losing games to Mana Screw when you have a 3-game match and you know you have another game. I couldn't imagine how bad it is when you just scrub out of a $12 entry fee by getting Mana Screw or Mana Flooded 3 games in a row.
So in any of this, do you just consider playing paper Magic again? What's the final straw for you?
Well,
this is just coming. Well, this is coming from someone that does not play MTGO nearly as much as paper. So
because I'm usually playing at some weird hour, or maybe I live somewhere where I'm not close to local game store. It's not like you can always just walk down your game store and have an 8-man fire, right? So I think for most people, that's not even an alternative. Tell me where to find this draft at 1 a.m. with high quality skilled opponents or something, right? Unless I live on campus and my dorm plays Magic, this is not happening. So there is no alternative. The alternative is I'll fire up some Hearthstone, right? Do 3 daily quests, get a free draft and go, right? That's the thing, as opposed to sinking $12 into this and who knows what's going to happen, right?
I mean, that does not seem right to me. I don't know what I feel for both of you. I mean, and for everyone else that plays MTGO. I personally don't play a lot of this program because of just, I don't know. I don't know really what to say on this other than I understand that you're trying to give more avenues to play the game, but I mean, someone has to sit down, or a group of people have to sit down and say, listen, that is not what that does not seem right for the cost that you're paying. Yeah,
so it's definitely not for someone like me and Seth, and maybe there is a big audience for this, but what I'm concerned about is, I don't know, are they trying to just be Hearthstone without understanding what makes Hearthstone tick? I don't know. We joked about how they were copying Hearthstone, but this looks like Hearthstone, right? This looks like Arena.
The preemptive changes.
Except you don't have daily quests, except it's $12 instead of $1.50, that game was designed and balanced around 1-game matches, whereas Magic has always been, a multi-game match. And I don't know. I don't know if there's another way. Could they not just reduce the chess clocks to 10 minutes or something? I'd rather play speed Magic than 1 round Magic.
Speed actual Magic, right.
Yeah,
right.
Just make your clock really short so you have to play fast.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, maybe I don't personally know, and I guess you guys have said this could be an audience. Maybe people will comment and kind of give their perspective on, why this could appeal to them, because for me, for someone that's played the game a long time and for someone that doesn't already use MTGO, this is not enticing to me at all because you're paying the same as a regular draft. So at that point, I might as well get the full experience out of it.
Yeah, it makes even less sense for the casual player because the casual player will go like 4-4, 3-4. Like they're not going to be able to hammer out like 7-0 wins and, whatever. So it actually is a bit confusing because it's meant for casual players and they're going to lose a ton of money. And even quote unquote good players will lose money because you need a really high win percentage to make this reasonable. And I'm not, saying, make a profit, but, hopefully each hour of Moto doesn't cost me like $40, right? Like I want to be able to play some, if I have Friday night off and I want to play 5 hours, hopefully it doesn't cost me like several $100s. Right? Like, it's not like I'm going to the casino, right? Like, this is supposed to be a hobby and a pastime. I like to get by spending, $10, $20 or something, right?
Now, let me just confirm with both of you, and just, so is this still modeled like League, so you can play one game, and then if you have to go, you can, like, come back and finish it later?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's at least. Okay.
I think that's their main goal, so you can play 20 minutes of Magic and then stop.
Do you have any concern? And like I said in the very beginning, like if this is just an additional offering that they think some people like, I'm fine with that. Do you have any concern, Richard, that this will be the only limited on Magic Online at some point?
No, because I think most people will dislike it. That's my opinion. I don't think I agree with you that if say 70% of the player base plays this, they'll just fold everything into this. That will definitely happen. But I'm gonna say that most people will not play this type of event. That's my guess. And if they do, then I guess we're all screwed. Maybe everyone likes this and we're kind of the old guard and we need to go away, right? Like that's very possible. And
wow.
At which point, I don't know, right?
Purged. We need to be cleansed from the new age Magic players.
I guess I don't have to worry too much about that because those people, based on this payout, will go broke way before Wizards can make that decision. Literally, because it's 7 wins or 4 losses, which means you have to go 7-3. That's 70%. You're like, that's Hall of Fame. You're talking literally best players ever in the history of Magic probably don't have that record, that percentage on the Pro Tour. Like, that's what you got to do to break even.
I don't know. I mean, Seth is a new, new age player. He started after Theros, so if he doesn't like it, I don't understand who this is targeted at.
So, Richard, you have Magic Online collection. Are you selling? Like, do you have any financial concern based on everything we've been talking about today?
I'm concerned, but you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Like I said, like I don't have much confidence, but if you sell your cards, you can't play anymore, right? And we obviously love the game of Magic, and I love playing Magic Online, right? Even despite its terrible interface and, lag and random bugs and downtime, I would play it, but I think it's going away. Something's happening, and in a couple of years, Magic Online won't be as we know it today. But if we sell our collections, we can't do anything. So, as a normal player, I wouldn't sell my collection. I think it's worth just playing more, and you're gonna kind of wait till the last minute to get out. You're gonna lose some money, but you're gonna get so much more enjoyment during that time. So that's my stance on it. Now, I can actually borrow cards, so I can actually just liquidate my collection if I felt like it, but currently it's still sitting there. So I haven't done anything with my collection. It's still sitting there, and I don't know. Hopefully something good happens. Hopefully, maybe they'll credit you when they convert to the new system. Maybe everyone will start playing Magic Online because it's so good, so your collection actually goes up. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic.
So
we need to get you out of nowhere land, upstate New York, and we're going over by Richard, and we're opening a store. This way we can play 24/7.
No, but even stuff like fetch lands. Oh my god, it's so annoying to play Modern in real life. Like on Moto, you just like crack fetch, done, right? In real life, you gotta shuffle. It's like there's a lot of small things that, Moto does well. You don't know how rules work? Well, Moto will tell you how the rules work, and usually it's correct. Like 99.9% of the time, it's correct. So there are some actual upsides of playing Magic Online.
So second question related to that one. Are you at all worried that some random day in the next 6 months, let's say, you're going to wake up and it's going to be like, hey, your collection's worthless. We have a new Magic Online coming that's like Hearthstone with no economy, blah, 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 free to play in this year. Is that going to happen in 2017?
Not this year.
Okay.
Maybe in the future. But I do imagine one day you'll wake up and they'll like, hey, we converted your collection to play points. So theoretically, we gave you the equivalent value, but not really. So I think something like that will happen when they switch to the new platform. But I can't imagine it coming out this year or even in 2 years. Like if we were going to see something in 2 years, we would have details of it by now. Like imagine any video game you've ever seen. Like they hype that stuff up like 3-4 years in advance, right? It takes a long time to make a game. So I can't imagine them just like springing one up on us out of nowhere. Unless so it's like V5 and looks exactly the same, like, you know, the iterations from V2 to V3 to V4 where you're like, what exactly changed? I don't know.
So you're thinking this is more a mid to long term thing then?
It's got to be at least 2 years, 3 years out. I can't imagine unless it's like literally V5 where it's the same thing. I can't imagine them springing us a new client so soon.
And I can't imagine it being V5 with all the stuff they have been saying, even though we haven't got any direct information about reimagining and even the name Magic Digital Next. That doesn't sound like, it's not like they're calling it V5 or whatever. So it makes it sound like this is a big change and not just a slightly updated version of what we already have.
But when we were at V3, did you really think V4 was going to be like this?
I guess that's true. Maybe. Oh, yeah. I don't know.
It's going to be version 1 because it won't even be MTGO anymore.
The thing is, I think they want to be like compatible with devices, and you can play it on your iPad or whatever. And I don't think it's possible with what they have now. I don't think they can just put some more shine on what they already have. I think making it compatible with your phone and your iPad and all that stuff means redoing it from the ground up, from what I've heard people say.
All right. Well, I think that was a good discussion on everything. Are we wrapping things up with fish mail?
Yep. Let's get some fish mail in here. Short week, but if you send your fish mail to @MTG Goldfish, #MTG Fishmail, we'll answer them. There were a lot of questions from the bannings and from the Magic Digital announcements and stuff, so hopefully we covered them. Here are some of the remaining questions. @Viper Johnny B, do you think Ulamog will replace Emrakul in Marvel decks?
I think that's the most natural replacement, yes. But I do think they have to play more than just that target now. I think the Marvel deck is going to look similar to what it did when people were still kind of brewing with it, where it had like maybe six to 8 targets rather than just the 4 Emrakul.
Yeah, I mean, they will play Ulamog. There's no doubt about it. The deck will also be bad now, which I'm pretty excited about. We saw the Pro Tour Kaladesh version. That's basically what you have is you go back to the Pro Tour Kaladesh version and that deck just folded to negate. And we saw it at the Pro Tour and a ton of people played it and it just did not survive because it wasn't very good. So I think the Aetherworks Marvel goes from the top of the meta way down to like another tier 2 deck because of this banning. So they will play Ulamog, but the deck is going to be much, much worse.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be that good, especially given that we have turn 4 combos. Emrakul at least let you disrupt them. Ulamog, like you take 2 lands and then you die to a combo. So I don't know that the payoff is good enough. So I think it will become a tier 2 deck. Next question, Raphael Simonelli. Do you think the recent bannings indicate that a watch list is required to respect customer investments?
Yes, and they already indicated as of today that they will be doing that.
Wait, what?
Well, they already said that they're watching the.
Well, that's their internal watch list, right? But do you think they'll actually publish something officially that says, "Hey, these cards might be on the block"?
Yes.
I mentioned this on Twitter saying that they should do that. And then I had a lot of people say, and I don't remember this, that they used to do that and it caused way more problems than it actually helped and just had this whole aura of fearfulness and people worrying about it. So people thought Wizards wouldn't do it because of that. Because that was my initial reaction. Just make a watch list so people don't get blindsided. But now I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know what the watch list would solve. Like you'd basically put every tier 1 staple up there, and what are you gonna do? Like not buy any of them? Like are we all just gonna brew like tier 3 decks because we're afraid of our tier 1 decks being banned. So while it sounds good in theory, I don't know how it actually work out in practice because everything good will be on there. Next question from a little cheeky. Using the 3 Magic player psychographics, how do you guys identify yourselves?
What is this is Timmy, Johnny, and Spike?
Timmy, Johnny, Spike, and I guess some of the new ones like Vorthos, Melvin, Melvos, I don't even know. There's some new ones as well.
I would say Spike first and foremost, only just because I'm competitive in nature, but that doesn't, it's not everything. Like I do enjoy Commander and being casual just like anybody else, but I would have to say Spike if I had to choose one.
I think I am definitely mostly Johnny. That's mostly how I play, but with some Spike tendencies thrown in. So probably Johnny mostly, then Spike, with Timmy being kind of at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm mostly Spike with some Timmy in there. I like to get all Timmy in Commander Clash, but when I play normally, I'm pretty spiky when I play, Modern or Legacy or something.
Right. Well said.
At BD8802, do you think more standard bannings are going to be the response/answer to moving back to the slower rotation? So we kind of talked about this.
I don't know. Yeah, we did kind of talk about this. I don't know where ultimately we end up, but I would think if they have to, use their release valve, they're going to. So I do think it's in response to standard having a longer rotation, because before the cards would just rotate faster and you wouldn't really have to worry about it as long. I don't know.
My hope, I think that's a possibility, but my hope is that they start putting answer cards again, and that is the solution rather than having to ban cards outright.
Yeah, I actually think they're going to go too far, and they're going to start banning things left and right for a bit before they find the happy medium. So I think they're going to wield their new power aggressively. That is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it also is because we don't know how far along. Well, obviously, I think they're further along. So if they're just realizing this now, then we might be in for a bumpy ride.
Yeah, if they're like 2 years in advance, then... And they just found out that, hey, we've been making standard incorrectly. We got 2 more years of this to go through. So the ban hammer, I think, will be swung mightily to fix that. And by the time we get to, the block after Amonkhet or whatever, which is what they're currently making, then everything will kind of work out again because they now understand and they can use that feedback. Last question from at AJ Hewitt. How do you all feel about vehicles becoming evergreen?
I don't think that really works. I mean, I guess it could work, but I guess it all depends on the plane, right? I guess evergreen would mean we see them almost every plane, like every block, right? So I don't know if they fit into the theme of every block.
I see them almost exactly like I see the colorless mana from Oath of the Gatewatch. I think that it's something that we'll see again, but I don't want it evergreen like equipment are, where we see it pretty much every set. I think as a once in a while, when it fits a flavor thing, it's awesome, but I just don't think they're something I'd be interested in having every single set.
Wait, why do you like equipment but not vehicles? Aren't they kind of similar? Like, it's this weird thing. Like, you already have auras. Like, why do you need equipment? But then they became evergreen.
Yeah.
I think it feels like equipment are more flexible and you can do more with them because they don't become creatures. I don't know if that's true or not, but how would you make a skull clamp vehicle?
No, but you're telling me in the existence of the multiverse, only one civilization has managed to invent a vehicle? Like lore-wise,
I was kind of thinking of it like nothing really has to even invent vehicles. Like I was even just thinking as I was answering, like Innistrad, you can have like a chariot be a vehicle.
Yeah.
Like you get inside of a chariot.
But I mean, how is that gonna be like, how much can you do with vehicles, I guess is my concern. With equipment, you can have equipment that like skull clamp that just you're not planning on having on creatures. Like vehicles are just kind of creatures 2.0, and that's all you can do with them.
I guess it's like what you said, you have discretion. Like you don't jam pack every block full of vehicles, but here and there could be interesting.
Like, I don't like it as evergreen because it's a bit complicated mechanically, but lore-wise, I think it actually fits everywhere. And it actually makes more sense on non-Kaladesh. Like, for example, you can make an elephant a vehicle or something, and it can crew itself with an ability. And, it makes perfect sense, right? And you could have all kinds of
I actually
vehicles.
like that.
You know, you could have starships or something somewhere else. Like, who knows, right? You could do Star Wars if you felt like it. But mechanically, as a new player, you're like, what is this a creature? Like, what happens? Can I do this at instant speed? It's like very complicated. So for that reason, I don't think it should be evergreen, but it's intriguing. Can you imagine what the vehicles would be on Amonkhet? Like, it'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
They're
They're not always going to be smugglers' copters, all right?
I like walking. I'm a walker.
Fair enough.
All right, that's all our fish mail for this week.
That is all our fish mail. And don't tell me you don't take Metro North. Come on. All right, I think that's it. Gentlemen, I think this was awesome to do, just to kind of have a reactionary podcast like this, to sit down and record this basically as the news came out. Seth, I know you're not going to be able to join us for Monday, so I think it was good that we kind of did this now.
Yeah, I'm glad we got it out because I really wanted to be able to talk the Moto stuff,
Right.
but I won't be around next week. So because of that in specific, I'm really glad we pushed it out because I wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone enjoys it. Obviously, you should thumb this up, and if you have just thoughts on your own, if you like the one match, I guess arena style draft, then I guess it would be good to get some explanations from people, because I think Richard said it best. We're kind of old guard.
Yeah, I'm really curious. If you guys think it's a good idea or a bad idea, let us know, because I'm really curious what kind of normal people, because we're kind of entrenched in this, you know, we kind of live and breathe Magic, and we're quote unquote old guard. But as someone who doesn't play too often, like, what is this a good thing? Is being Hearthstone Arena like a pull? Like, it'd be interesting to get some comments on that.
Yeah. All right, so that is going to wrap things up. You will hear from us soon. So this is going to be the MTG Goldfish crew signing out. Take care, everyone.